paradrama tales.
My crush, Lucia, held my hand after chemistry class and asked me not to watch when she live-streamed her sewers line during third period tomorrow. I thought she was finally seeing me. Turns out she was saying goodbye. I called 911 that night. It saved her life. I was 15 when Lucia pulled me aside after chemistry class. We'd been close since 6th grade, laughing in hallways, sharing homework answers, drifting in and out of each other's orbit, like we were tethered by something invisible. I'd had a crush on her for years, but never told a soul. That day she looked at me with eyes that didn't sparkle like they used to, and her voice trembled when she asked me to promise something. For a second, I thought maybe she was about to ask me to the dance. I'd been practicing how I'd say yes in the mirror for a week, but instead, she leaned in and whispered something that knocked the wind out of me. She told me about Friday, how she'd been planning it for months, how no one listened, how no one cared unless it was about grades or attendance. The teachers ignored her cries for help. Her parents only noticed her GPA. She'd taken a gun from her mom's locked drawer and planned to end her life during third period live streaming everything, so everyone who had failed her would see it and never forget. But not me, she said. She squeezed my hand and told me not to watch. You're the only one who ever really saw me, she said. Her words didn't feel like a compliment. They felt like a goodbye. That night, I didn't sleep. I scrolled through her Instagram, trying to see what I'd missed, photos where her smile didn't quite reach her eyes, cryptic captions that suddenly made sense, poems about vanishing and shadows and silence. She hadn't been okay for a long time, and I'd been too busy daydreaming about asking her out to really notice. My heart pounded as I thought about what she'd told me. I pictured the empty chair in chemistry, the silence in the hallways, her parents breaking down at a funeral instead of cheering at graduation. But mostly I imagined living with the guilt of doing nothing. At 5 a.m., with my hands shaking, I called the Sewerslide Prevention Hotline. They patched me through to the police. My voice cracked as I gave them her name, her address, the time she said it would happen. The officer on the line told me I was saving her life, but it didn't feel like that. It felt like I was betraying her. They got to her at 7:30 that morning. She was in her room about to set up her phone. The pills were already laid out. The note was already written. The news later called it a mental health crisis intervention. The school praised itself for acting fast. No one ever said my name, but Lucia knew. She didn't come back to school for 2 months. When she finally did, she wouldn't even look at me. When Lucia returned to school 2 months later, she wasn't the same, and neither was I. She walked the halls surrounded by new friends I'd never seen before, like a human wall guarding her from the past. She wouldn't look at me, wouldn't answer my texts, wouldn't even acknowledge I existed. And maybe that was fair. Maybe I deserved the silence. I had taken her secret, her plan, and exposed it to the world. I had saved her life, but in her eyes I'd stolen her choice. At first I tried to give her space, thinking time might soften the edges between us, but then the whispers started, muted conversations behind locker doors, glances in the cafeteria that lasted a beat too long, people saying I'd only called the police because I couldn't handle rejection, because I was obsessed with her, because I'd freaked out. The worst part, some of our mutual friends started to believe it. One even asked me if I'd made it all up. That night I deleted all our texts, every photo, every memory that might keep me clinging to something that was clearly gone. The school praised itself for hiring more counselors, launching a peer support program, even holding mental health workshops. But for me, there were no workshops on how to live with being the villain in someone else's recovery story. I began to notice small things, like how every time I entered a room, conversations paused, eyes flicked my way. A photo popped up on Instagram, someone's birthday party. In the background, barely visible, was me glancing in Lucia's direction. The caption read, "Some people just don't get the hint." Then came the TikTok video. Security footage from school, edited to make it look like I was following her. The part where she had waited for me in the hallway was cut. What remained was me walking behind her looking confused. The comments were brutal, creepy. This is why she almost unalived. He can't take no for an answer. I reported the video, but more popped up each one, more damning, more twisted than the last. I tried to explain to my parents, but even they started to ask questions I didn't have answers for. My mom asked gently, why would she lie about something like this? I showed her the note Lucia had left in my locker on graduation day, the threat, but she only saw a scrap of paper with no signature. She told me maybe I was reading too much into it, that maybe Lucia was just trying to heal, but I knew better. I wasn't imagining it. She was watching me, shaping a story, turning the people around me into her audience. She wasn't just trying to move on. She was trying to erase me one carefully edited post at a time. The real turning point came on graduation day. I was already on edge, half expecting something to happen, and then I found the note. It was tucked neatly into my locker, folded once, as if it were a love letter. But the handwriting was unmistakable Lucia's. My heart dropped before I even opened it. The message inside wasn't long, but every word felt like a punch to the gut. You took my choice away. You made me live when I wanted to die. Now I'm going to take everything from you piece by piece until you understand what it feels like to lose control. I stood there frozen, my hands shaking as I reread the words again and again. Graduation was starting in 20 minutes. My parents were already saving seats, and I couldn't stop thinking, what was she planning? I rushed through the hallways, checking every classroom, every bathroom, half convinced she was about to do something awful all over again. But the school was nearly empty, most people already in the auditorium. That's when I saw her. She was standing at the far end of the main hallway in her cap and gown, her back to me. When she turned around, her expression was cold, unreadable. She held up her phone and pressed record. I didn't understand what was happening until she walked straight toward me, keeping the camera pointed at my face. Then she spoke loud enough for the recording to catch. "Why are you following me? I already told you to leave me alone." I was stunned, mouth open, trying to make sense of it. Before I could say anything, she leaned in and whispered, so only I could hear one word, and I'll scream. "Who do you think they'll believe, the girl who almost ended her life because of bullying? Or the boy who betrayed her?" She stepped back and raised her voice again for the camera. "Please just go away. I don't want any trouble." Then she turned and walked off, leaving me standing there like I'd been hit by a truck. That's when I realized this wasn't random. This was a setup. She was building a story, a version of reality where I was the dangerous one. I went through the motions of graduation, but I couldn't focus. She sat a few rows ahead, with her family smiling, waving, getting a standing ovation when her name was called. When mine was announced, the applause was light, cautious. People remembered. They believed the rumors. Afterward, my parents wanted to take photos. I faked a smile as we posed by the school sign, but I couldn't ignore the fact that, in every picture, Lucia stood somewhere in the background, always watching, always filming. That night, I couldn't sleep. My phone buzzed with a new photo of me in the grocery store, clearly taken without my knowledge. The caption read, "Can't even shop without him showing up." This is getting scary. I realized then that graduation hadn't been the end. It was just the beginning. 2 weeks after graduation, I stopped feeling like a person and started feeling like a target. The photo from the grocery store spread across our town's Facebook group like wildfire. Strangers I'd never met were tagging each other in the comments, speculating about whether the police should be involved, urging people to protect Lucia at all costs. I'd gone in to buy cereal, that was it. But now I was being framed as some kind of predator lurking around every corner. When I got home, my mom was already at the kitchen table, laptop open, face pale. She looked up at me and said, "We need to talk." She had seen the video, the photo, the comments. She didn't want to believe them, but she was scared. She asked me what was really going on. So I told her everything, the note from graduation, the hallway setup, the edited videos. I even showed her the screenshots. She listened, but I could see the doubt forming behind her eyes. She asked, why would she do this? I didn't have an answer that made sense to anyone but me. That night, I lay awake watching my reputation collapse in real time. My inbox filled with angry DMs. My followers dropped. My best friend since middle school texted a long, cold message, "I don't know who you are anymore. I'm done." That one hurt the most. I decided I couldn't let this go on. I started collecting everything. Timestamps, inconsistencies in the videos, reflections in windows showing someone else filming. And then I saw him, Marcus Royville, one of Lucia's new friends, the most vocal online defender of her truth. He was in the background of several videos, always nearby, always watching. I zoomed in, compared dates, created folders. I was building a case. Still, it felt like shouting into the void. I wrote a long post explaining my side, how I'd saved Lucia's life, how this was all a twisted revenge plan. Within an hour, my post was reported and removed for harassment. My account was suspended, hers still up, still spreading. College was only a few days away, and I'd been counting on it to be my fresh start. But now I wondered if the story would follow me there too. Then something happened that shook me to my core. I was loading my car in the mall parking lot when Marcus and 2 other guys showed up. They didn't say anything, just stood there. Marcus showed me his phone. On it was a group chat. Protecting L, over 50 members. Dozens of messages tracking my whereabouts, screenshots of me on campus, suggestions on what to do if I got too close. They walked away without a word, but I got the message. I wasn't just being stalked, I was being hunted. This wasn't about Lucia anymore. It was a movement. She had weaponized survival into a narrative, and I was the villain in it. That night I realized I couldn't survive this alone. I needed help, real help. So I reached out to the only person I thought might still have a sliver of doubt left, Sarah. She and Lucia used to be friends before everything. She'd been distant, quiet, but she never joined the hate train. I found her working at a small bookstore downtown. When she saw me, her posture stiffened, but she didn't run. I approached slowly, hands visible, voice steady. "I just need to talk," I said. She hesitated, then led me to the back corner of the store. There in whispers, I told her everything. The note, the videos, the online campaign. Sarah listened silently, her brows furrowed. When I finished, she took a deep breath and said something that made my blood run cold. Lucia had approached her months ago with an idea she called the Recovery Project. It wasn't therapy. It was revenge dressed up as empowerment. Lucia wanted to show the world that survivors could take control, but her version of control meant destroying the one person who'd taken her choice away. Sarah had declined to be part of it, and from that moment, Lucia cut her off. Now Sarah was seeing what that project had become. She agreed to help. Over the next few days, she monitored old group chats and fed me bits of information. Lucia had a system, phases like a military operation. First, isolate me. Second, escalate. Paint me as increasingly unstable. The third phase was called resolution, and Sarah couldn't find much on it, only that it was meant to be final. I lived in a constant state of dread. Every time I left the house, I felt eyes on me. Every move I made, every place I went felt like a trap. My parents were breaking down. My mom was placed on administrative leave after anonymous messages were sent to her workplace. My dad's clients were calling concerned about his family situation. One night, I got a message from an unknown number. It was a photo taken from across the street of my house. Caption: "This is just the beginning. Sweet dreams." I ran to my parents' room shaking and showed them. My dad grabbed a flashlight and went outside, while my mom called the police. They arrived quickly but found nothing, no evidence, no footprints. One officer quietly suggested maybe I was dealing with stress. Another pulled my parents aside. I couldn't hear what he said, but I saw the way they looked at me afterward, like maybe I was losing my grip. That's exactly what Lucia wanted: the isolation, the gaslighting, the doubt. But then Sarah sent me a screenshot, a photo of Lucia's laptop at a party. On the screen was a document titled Project Restoration. You could barely make it out, but I saw the words phases, timeline, and objectives. It was real, all of it. And I finally had something tangible. It wasn't enough to end this, but it was a crack in her perfect narrative, a weakness. And for the first time in weeks, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time: hope. Hope turned into urgency when Sarah finally uncovered the details of Phase 3, Lucia's so-called resolution. She was planning a final confrontation, something dramatic and public, that would make me look like a threat beyond redemption. According to Sarah, Lucia had people ready to film it, witnesses positioned, and even a location picked out. She knew my routines, my errands, even when I'd be at the bank. That's when I realized she wasn't just planning to ruin me socially. She wanted to destroy any chance I had at a future. But knowing the plan gave me a chance to counter it. So instead of going to the bank that day, I sent my dad. Sure enough, he called to say Lucia had been there, surrounded by her usual crew, all with phones in hand, ready to catch me in the act of something. When I didn't show up, she must have known I was slipping through her fingers, because that afternoon, she came to my house. I was upstairs when I heard her voice at the front door, sweet, careful, pretending to be concerned. She told my mom she was worried about me, said she just wanted to clear the air. My mom, still clinging to the hope this was all a big misunderstanding, invited her in. I hit record on my phone and walked downstairs, heart pounding. Lucia sat on our couch, soft-spoken, calculated the picture of vulnerability. She said she wanted peace, that we'd misunderstood each other, that maybe we could let the past go. Then, in a sudden movement, she stood up, stepped toward me, and with a gasp, knocked over a lamp. It crashed to the floor as she screamed. He tried to grab me, but my mom had seen everything. I hadn't moved. I hadn't said a word. The shock on my mom's face said it all. She finally saw it. The performance, the manipulation. The illusion shattered. Lucia tried to backpedal, claiming she was startled that she'd misread the moment. But it was too late. My mom asked her to leave. She gathered her things, but before walking out, she leaned close and whispered, "This isn't over." Only this time, her voice lacked the certainty it once had. That night, my parents and I sat at the kitchen table, going over everything: videos, messages, timelines. The pattern was undeniable now. It wasn't just social sabotage, it was a campaign of psychological warfare. The next morning, Mr. Cole called. He'd reviewed school security footage as part of a safety audit and saw the unedited version of that hallway encounter 3 years ago. It showed Lucia waiting for me, approaching me, not the other way around. He had filed an official report and recommended law enforcement be involved. Things began to move quickly. The school launched an internal investigation. Lucia's allies started cracking under pressure. Some confessed they were told to film, to follow, to post. Sarah delivered the final blow screenshots from a private chat, where Lucia laid out her goals in explicit detail: isolate, discredit, and destroy me. Her intent was clear, and her plan was exposed. And yet, even as the truth finally surfaced, I didn't feel victorious, just exhausted. All I'd ever wanted was for it to stop. When the truth finally came out, it didn't feel like a victory. There were no cheers, no apologies shouted from rooftops, just quiet acknowledgments, half-hearted messages from old classmates, and a slow shift in how people looked at me. Lucia was officially banned from campus, her fake reports and harassment campaign documented and reported to authorities. Some of her friends received warnings. A few others deleted their accounts and vanished without a trace. The website dedicated to exposing me disappeared overnight. The hate slowed, but the damage remained. My college, which had once called with concern, now sent a letter stating the case had been closed and there was no longer reason for disciplinary review. But 3 years of being seen as a monster don't vanish with one email. My social media accounts were still ghost towns. My reputation wasn't restored, it was just no longer under attack. I thought that would be the end of it, but then I received a letter. Not from Lucia, but from her parents. They apologized, said they hadn't seen what was happening until it was too late, said she was in intensive therapy now, working with trauma specialists. They thanked me for saving her life, even if she still couldn't forgive me. Enclosed in the envelope was a handwritten note. It was from Lucia. Her handwriting had changed, messier, less guarded. She didn't say sorry, not exactly. But she acknowledged everything, the pain, the manipulation, the lies. She said she now understood what she had done, but she still couldn't forgive me for making the choice for her that day. That feeling of losing control had consumed her. Hurting me had made her feel powerful. She ended by saying she was transferring to a school across the country. She promised we'd never cross paths again. I kept the letter, not because I wanted to relive the nightmare, but because it reminded me that even our darkest choices come from somewhere real, somewhere broken. The rest of my freshman year passed more quietly. New rumors replaced the old ones. People moved on. I rebuilt slowly. My grades recovered. I joined a study group. Theo, who had stood by me through it all, became one of my closest friends. We never really talked about the worst of it, but he understood in a way few others could. Summer came. I stayed on campus, took extra classes, worked in the library. One night, sitting under the soft hum of fluorescence, my phone buzzed. It was just my mom sending a photo from a family barbecue. Normal life. Real life. I smiled for the first time in what felt like forever. Lucia had tried to take everything from me piece by piece, but I'd built it all back one moment at a time. I didn't win. She didn't lose. We just survived. Two broken kids who made impossible choices. As I shut my laptop and walked back to my dorm, I didn't feel like a victim or a villain. I felt like a student again. And that finally was enough. If this story moved you, even just a little, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss the next chapter. We share real, raw, and emotional stories that dive deep into the complexities of trust, betrayal, healing, and resilience. Every comment, every share, every subscriber helps us keep telling stories that matter. Stories that remind us we're not alone in our struggles. Whether you've experienced something similar or simply want to understand the quiet battles others fight, this is a space for empathy, reflection, and growth. So, let us know your thoughts below. What would you have done in his place? Do you believe saving someone justifies losing yourself in the process? Let's talk about it. And as always, thank you for watching and supporting our journey one story at a time.